invite you to join us tonight and happy to have you for actually our first program and our first edition for the Souls of Black Folk broadcast. I'm student minister Rodney Muhammad, helping the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And let me first say, in the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, we thank Almighty God for his prophets. We thank him for his light of truth that has traveled with us throughout the ages, even in these difficult times. And we are most thankful to Allah for his intervention in our affairs in these last days in the person of Master Fard Muhammad, to whom praise is due forever. We thank him for the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, his exalted servant now, the Christ figure, and the Mahdi, who is the Christ figure of the Muslim world. And we thank them for a great messianic figure and voice for us today and for humanity in general, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So once again, I want to thank my co-host, dear student minister Michael Muhammad here in the great Atlantic City.
Yes, sir.
Joining us here for the Souls of Black Folk. And, we're very excited for the first show to break us in, none other than our good brother Wakeel Allah. And we're going to talk more about that. But first, we want to let you know that if you go to noi.org, you'll find a mountain hill of things that you can do there. Number one, you can hear our regular live Sunday broadcast, which is usually conducted by our student national assistant to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, student minister Ishmael Muhammad, along with other great voices from our executive council that have been feeding the nation during this COVID-19 crisis and shutdown of many of our religious institutions for the past year. And we thank them for the great work that they have been doing. So noi.org on Sunday mornings for Eastern Standard Time, it's 11 a.m. For Central, it's 10 a.m. You can see a live broadcast coming from our flagship mosque, Mariam, right there in the city of Chicago. In addition to that, you'll find out how you can order books from our Final Call newspaper and get tapes and recordings, even of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but certainly the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and other important writings from some of the great authors that we have. We also want to let you know about the Final Call newspaper, a great organ for truth. You can get that paper in your cities, wherever you are. But we also have digital subscriptions, in which case I'm one of those subscribers, and I enjoy reading my Final Call weekly right from my own laptop. So with those things said, we certainly want to keep you plugged into any and all activity. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan just spoke at a national event where I believe Black leadership is trying to unite throughout the Caribbean, throughout the United States, and abroad. And they promised to have the Nubian unity effort, promised to have another session this year in August. So again, we want to thank you for being with us. We're going to be airing on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. in the future. You can get us all the time. We'll be on Facebook Live. You'll be able to get us from our YouTube page also. And so we are thankful for your presence to be with us. Tonight we have joining us a young man born not far from us. He grew up right there in Plainsfield, New Jersey. And at the high school level, as a young man, he joined what is known as the 5% Nation. He went on to college at Morehouse College there in Atlanta, Georgia. And of course, there he was very robust in recruiting people for the 5% Nation, even recruiting people for the Nation of Islam. He joined on with one of our own who is now in the leadership position in the executive council, our own Dr. Wesley, and they formed an organization called the Allah Team, and this is a grouping of educators, activists, artists, cultural influencers, and all just a very dynamic team that was traveling the country and doing things. But brother is also a Nation of Islam member under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Some of the books that he's authored, you want to get it. It's exciting reading. In the Name of Allah, the history of Clarence 13X. And I believe there are two releases on that book. He's also authored The Naked Truth, the history of the Nation of Islam, some fascinating interviews of early pioneers of the Nation of Islam. And he also authored The Nation of Islam, Temple Number 7, Harlem, USA, My Years with Malcolm and Farrakhan. So we want to welcome our own brother, Wakeel Allah, to join us tonight. We're very excited, and we hope that we didn't disturb you, but we're so happy to have you tonight, Brother Wakeel Allah. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings to you and peace.
Brother. Wa alaikum salam. Peace be unto you, beloved brother, student minister, Rodney Muhammad. Brother, you know, it's such an honor to be on your show, brother, and to be on your platform because, like you said, growing up in Plainfield, we were really exposed to Islam, you know, in particular, the Nation of Islam, especially during the rebuild years when I was a youth. So coming up as a youth and being mentored by the different brothers and sisters in the community, one of the things that we were so young that we couldn't really go out. We didn't really venture out. You know, we were 12 and 13 years old. Well, we had access to the Final Call newspaper, dear brother, and to mentors that we would see in that paper, starting with Brother Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, you know, Brother Jabril Muhammad, you know, Minister Abdul Allah, you know, all these different powerful brothers. And then I had there in our city, our great brother, Minister Abdul Kareem Muhammad, you know, in Plainfield, who I believe was the East Coast Regional Minister when I was coming up during the rebuild. But I specifically remember you, dear brother, you know, specifically.
Oh, my goodness.
You. And I didn't know you personally, but I knew of you and I knew of all of the ministers in the Nation of Islam as if they were like the X-Men or the Avengers or superheroes to those of us that were young brothers, grooming to be young soldiers in the community. So it really is, for me, a lifelong commitment, right? And it is a great honor to be there or here with you, dear brother, you know, especially now as a student minister for the regional over the Delaware Valley region, DVR, as I understand.
DVR, as they call it. That's right.
Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. You have a great, powerful history in dealing with the city of Philadelphia and your long tenure in that mosque. And beloved, you know, me and Brother Wesley, of course, Brother Student Minister Michael, and many of the brothers on the Allah team, Brother Understanding Allah, you know, Brother J Electronica, Brother Malou Sadiq. We always viewed number 12 as like our home mosque, you know, because you were so welcoming to us, you know, at a point in time when you really embraced us, even before we became quote unquote official, you know, if you will. So we were very thankful to you, brother, because you really threw us a lifeline to give us a platform to continue manifesting the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, where we wanted really to manifest it most within the mosque of the Nation of Islam, because that is the man and woman manufacturing machine, right? How to create and how to produce gods. But as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us, but we don't stay there, so we venture out. But we definitely need a base. And whenever we need to re-energize, we can say, you know what? We need to go visit Philadelphia. You know, we would go visit Trenton, you know, Mosque number 44, Brother Student Minister Michael was there. So in that Delaware Valley is very special, you know, to us, the brothers and the sisters on the Allah team. And you, dear brother, you know, are absolutely, you know, very special to myself and, you know, to my comrades for certainty. So this right here is such a great honor, beloved. So thank you for having me, you know, on this platform.
Brother, we thank you for coming. I appreciate those words. We, you Yeah, we always loved it. I thank Allah for my secretary. He was so influential in doing that, Brother Lance, and his
Yes,
wife
sir.
had experience with the 5% Nation. And, anytime we're building something else in our community, there's always great support. And then there's always, the controversial aspect of things perhaps that people don't like. And I never forget something, Al Sharpton said that someone told him when he was young. He said, life is like a football game, and you go and one half of the stadium is cheering you, the other half of the stadium is jeering you. And he said, so don't let the ones that are jeering you discourage you to the point that you stop moving down the field, but don't let the ones that are cheering you intoxicate you to the point that you forget that your object on the field is to get to the goal line. So I really appreciate, the work that the Allah team was doing in that. And I guess that sort of goes into one of the books that you did, In the Name of Allah, because it seems like Clarence 13 sort of started the same way with a broader outreach that was still seemingly in the wording and the mission of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, wanting Malcolm and others to really reach the young people. And sometimes the model that we have um, may not be designed to really get right to them the way that when I read the book In the Name of Allah, I mean, some of the methods that were used, we certainly weren't employing those methods, but they were getting to reach some of them. I wanted to ask how you all have been faring during this COVID-19 period, Brother Wakeel Allah.
Well, beloved, of course, following the instructions of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, definitely quarantining, staying within the home, not being negligent in any of our dealings, only going out really when necessary, cooking for ourselves, making sure we are sanitizing our environments. And whenever we go, of course, we keep our mask on. And, it's very interesting that a lot of people may not even be really aware of how adamant the Nation of Islam is as it concerns health. And even right here in America, because when the pandemic first hit, it was right after our Savior's Day event, you know. And and the interesting thing is, after Savior's Day event, a lot of us felt sick in a sense. I caught the flu when I was there in Detroit. And Brother Wesley had it worse than me. and and going to the doctors and everything, getting checked out and whatnot. And then to hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan give the lecture for that particular Savior's Day, the unraveling of America, this hit right before anyone really knew a pandemic was about to go down. So it just showed the prophetic sense, just as it says in the scriptures, that the coming of God will tell you what to eat. As the Honorable Elijah Muhammad manifested to us as the guide, he told us who would be the one that would guide us, meaning our brother Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan, where he says to go, what he says, stay away from, stay away from. And those of us who attempt to follow, that creed and follow that wisdom and guidance, for the most part, will have a blanket of protection. And the blanket of protection that we have with us is really the power of Allah, and just utilizing our scruples and our wisdom. So when he gave us that sound advice on the unraveling of a nation, and also said that this could also be applicable even to those of us within the Nation of Islam. So just like a watchman, you have to be on watch at all times. You take charge of your post and all temporal property in view at all times. So really following his instruction and his guidance, as one, understanding the time and what must be done. I thank Allah, and I say all praise is due to Allah, that I haven't gotten sick, since coming home during this whole time frame. And now we're now a year and a month into the pandemic. And I haven't, and I won't take any vaccinations or anything of that sort unless approved, unless we have our own as approved within
Let me ask you,
the Nation of Islam.
For the sake of the listeners, what exactly is the 5% Nation,
Mhm.
and its origin?
Yes,
Did it
sir.
start in one city of the country or that?
Right. Yes, sir. Well, the Five Percenters, as it was originally called, started in Harlem, New York, with a brother named Clarence 13X, and this was in 1964. So he was a member of the Nation of Islam within the ranks from 1960 to 1964. So he soldiered under Brother Minister Malcolm X and Captain Yusuf Shah, First Officer Lieutenant Clarence 7X. He was married to a sister named Dora, Sister Dora 3X. So this brother was in the ranks for 4 years, and what I like to say about him is that he wasn't what you consider a Sunday Muslim. He was like an everyday Muslim, right? So he was in the mosque. He practically enjoyed or really his livelihood was based on the mosque because he was employed by the mosque as a painter. It was called Earth Improvement Painters Corporation that was started by some brothers in Mosque and Temple Number 7 in Harlem at the time. So he stayed there throughout, the days, and he soldiered, and he only worked, in the Nation of Islam. And of course, he sold the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. And one of the things that there's a misconception I think that we even have in the Nation of Islam, because large in part, the five percenters actually get their name directly from the lessons of the Nation of Islam. And by the lessons, we mean that in 1930, from 1930 to 1934, for 3.5 years, Master Fard Muhammad, who we say is Allah in person, taught the most honorable Elijah Muhammad for 3.5 years in the supreme revelation of the knowledge of self. So he taught the honorable Elijah Muhammad the key to revelation and the key to all things, as it was predicted that Allah would do. So as a result of him pouring himself into the honorable Elijah Muhammad for 3.5 years, he instructed him in what is called the supreme wisdom, which comes the lessons, which is the unique revelation and teachings of the Nation of Islam. So this developed a question and answer or a catechism. So from the 1930s on even onto the 60s, the Muslims, the FOI and the MGT all had to recite these lessons verbatim. Master Fard Muhammad, that was one of the main commandments that he left for us in the Nation of Islam. And that was the thing that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad had continued. So this became a rites of passage, right? So the average FOI and the average MGT would be able to recite these lessons really just at the drop of a dime at a commandment, depending on what lesson they were on. So Brother Clarence 13X was indoctrinated into that process in a 4-year process, right? So when he came outside of the temple or the mosque with the mission, like you said earlier, that he wanted to go out, he wanted to teach the youth and the babies, as we call it, meaning the brothers and sisters, the young brothers and sisters from like 8 years old up to 21. He wanted to instruct them into the knowledge of self, because the youth in Harlem, New York in the 60s was very fascinated by the teachers of the Nation of Islam. Because like I was telling you and me observing you through the final call and everything, that the young people saw Malcolm, they saw Captain Yusuf Shah, they saw Brother Minister Farrakhan, Brother Jeremiah Shabazz, Minister James Shabazz. So all of these local people and powerful ministers, brothers and sisters, was really like mentors to those out in the community. So Brother Clarence 13X, he just went one step further. Like you said, he had some unorthodox methodologies and get into the youth. But one of the things that he did was he decided to share, this, which some would describe as a certain aspect of culture, is a reciting of the lessons of Master Fard Muhammad and the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, which was a first. So he gave them the lessons and he taught them that the name of this movement was going to be the five percenters, which comes directly from a lesson given from Master Fard Muhammad and the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And the lesson says, who is the 5% of this poor part of the planet Earth? That's Master Fard Muhammad asking the question. And the answer is answered by the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. He said, they are the poor righteous teachers who do not believe in the teachings of the 10%, who are all wise and know who the true and living God is, who teach that the true and living God is the Son of Man, the supreme being, the Black man of Asia, who teach freedom, justice, and equality to all the human families of the planet Earth, otherwise known as civilized people, also as Muslim and Muslim sons. So when Brother Clarence shared that with the young brothers, he said, well, you can identify as five percenters if you teach this, because the 5%, we have a natural opposition in what is called the 10% of the population. 5% is that population. You got the 10%, that's the population. They know the truth, yet they hide the truth, they conceal it, and they utilize the truth to exploit the masses of the people. And the number one exploitation, or the number one misdirection that they have, is the identity of God, where they keep the identity of God and preach that God is a mystery, something that you can't see, something that you cannot even attain to. So they take this knowledge, so-called knowledge, or trick knowledge, and they use it to exploit the masses, and the masses are the 85% of the people. And those are the people, they're not necessarily rooted in a particular culture, except that which the 10%ers have taught them about. So they're exploited, they're eating the wrong foods, got the wrong diet, and most of all, they're believing in the same kind of God that the rich slave makers of the poor are teaching them about. And that's
So
where
they
the
come
concept comes
right
from.
up, yeah, and so they come right up out of the lessons that were rehearsed right in the mosque that Clarence 13 had come from.
Right.
So now the 5%ers, are they still in existence in their form, the way Clarence 13 and some of the others, the Black Messiah and others that had come together, I guess, to bring, they had to build it first. I
Right.
imagine, do they still exist? Is there someone that sits over them now, or
Right. It's definitely in existence. One of the things that attracted me to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and I'll never forget this, as a young 5%er, I would hear his ministers there in New Jersey, Philadelphia, and New York City. One of the things that they would say to us, we were young, we were out in the street, we was out in the community. One of the things they would say, Minister Farrakhan has said that this is a divine movement. And I was like, what? Us? Brother Farrakhan is saying that about us? He said, yes. He said, it's a divine movement because it's still here. It's still in existence. And much of that is due to the respect and honor that the 5%ers paid to the lessons. Now, the way Brother Clarence did it when he came out in the community, he didn't necessarily make a bona fide organization, if you will. It was somewhat loose-knit. It's what we like to describe as a culture, as a way of life. So the ritual was the same ritual that they taught in FY and MGT class, was the foundation of the lessons, our recitation of the lessons, just like any fraternal or sorority aspect. These are different challenges that you have. How do you see today's mathematics? You ask an answer, they expected, you ask the question, they're expecting a certain answer. So when the brother started the movement, if you will, in New York City, they said it was the largest youth movement, only rivaled by the Boy Scouts of America. So this is a movement prevalent in Harlem, which became Mecca, Brooklyn, which became Medina, Queens, which became the desert, and the Bronx, which became Patmos or Pilon. And these are all jargon and language that's come from the Nation of Islam that was adopted by the 5%ers. So the movement was there, it was solid, especially when the Nation of Islam went through what they call a transition. At that time, the 5%ers was a bit older, so they was able to kind of be like almost stand-ins for the Nation of Islam. When the Nation of Islam fell, they became like light, right? And I hear Brother Minister Abdul Hafiz Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. One of the things that our dear beloved brother would say is that, the way he understood it and the way it was communicated to him, with the 5%ers at that time during the Nation of Islam transition was like, in a sense, like moonlight, because everybody was dim in a sense at the time. So the brothers was like reflecting the light of the sun, but in an aspect similar to the moonlight, right? And when Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan resurrected the Nation of Islam in the second resurrection, that's when everybody started lifting up in the 80s, especially in New York City. So with the rising of the Nation of Islam, so follows the Black community, so follows, the 5%ers. So many 5%ers added on the Nation of Islam. Myself, Minister Abdul Hafiz Muhammad, Brother Student Minister Michael Muhammad is here with the calls with us. Brother Wesley, Brother Shaheed Mallah, Captain True See Allah, True Love Allah. The list goes on and on. Just like the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan taught, and just like Brother Clarence 13X taught, at one point in time, there would be many 5%ers that would come and offer a service to the Nation of Islam and join on to our own, which, by the way, he taught we were 5%ers, but he said we were the 5%ers of the Nation of Islam, because the same way we learned the lessons out in the community, in the street, even though you wasn't a registered Muslim, you were still considered a Muslim by nature, because you was born Muslim. So with the advent of hip hop coming in the 80s, in the 90s, that's when Eric B and Rakim, the
I
world
was going
famous,
to ask you about that. So they were tied. I mean, they were affiliated with the 5% Nation, or at least they kind of cross-pollinated, or
oh yes, sir. They
yeah,
were bona fide. Yeah, they were bona fide hardcore 5%.
Oh, they were bona fide. Okay, they were in.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. Yes,
Now,
sir.
They knew the lessons. I mean,
Oh yes, sir.
yeah. Okay. Okay.
Busta Rhymes, Erica Badu came into the knowledge. Everybody has been influenced by it, but that just helped increase.
But I mean, they were some of the early rappers, because I guess I'm looking at the, when it comes to Black music, like they can take the blues and trace some of the early singers back to the church, or they can, Ray Charles and Aretha was seen as kind of having the blues, a mixture of the blues and some of the gospel and that kind of thing with it. And I guess, we're tracing all other Black music, but I've never just seen a program where they trace rap back to anything that had to do with theology or anything like that. But it seems that it did.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, I have to interject at this point because
okay.
Wakeel, brother minister, I've been talking to Wakeel for the past 3 years about writing this book, brother.
Yes, sir.
Writing this book about this very conversation and the influences of Islam, and particularly the Nation of Islam and the 5% Nation
absolutely.
on hip hop. And
Absolutely.
going all the way back to Cold Crush, Born a Law, and Cold Crush, Supreme Team, and we can go get real deep into the influences of that. But Wakeel, what was it specifically that attracted you to the knowledge of self as a young 5%er coming into the 5%? Me, particularly, when I heard the Black man was God, it was automatically an attraction. But what was it to you that attracted you to the 5% as a young 13, 14-year-old?
Yes, sir. I think when I interviewed so many people, hundreds of people in regards to their path of Islam, really it's a common theme. We almost all have the same story, right? Growing up Black in America, you see what's going on even as a young person. So growing up in Plainfield, after the riots and the rebellions and everything, and it was Black power, do for self, it was the red, black, and green. Even when I was like 6, 7, 8, I had a genuine love for Black people because I was totally surrounded and immersed by Black people. And seeing the oppression and reading our history of Martin Luther King, and even going back to slavery, I wanted to do something to kind of uplift our community. So I was looking for something that really exemplified true Black righteousness and Black power. And there was no other symbol that I saw that could equate to the Nation of Islam. I ran immediately to the library when I heard, my cousin tell me that the Black man was God and the 5%ers, the Nation of Islam. I immediately went to the library and picked up anything I could. And I was talking to this white librarian, trying to explain it to her. And she sent me, I was looking at Muhammad Ali, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I just became fascinated with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and how he had this government on his shoulders. And we cut out the different pictures. And when you're young, you want to belong to an organization. That's why many of us, myself included, at a very young age, was in what you would call gangs, right?
That's right.
So it's a natural attraction to be militant, and Islam brings out that militant propensity. So when I hear that specific information designated, and now I know by the architect and the Lord of all of the worlds, just for you and I, here in the so-called Negro in the wilderness of North America, it automatically made me stand upright even as a young person. So I wanted to be a soldier, and it's hard to do that on your own. So I had examples. And like I said, when I saw Brother Farrakhan, that was it for me. You know what I mean? I was like, yo, this is like Superman coming. You know what I mean? Like this is the one, because I saw him walking down East 2nd Street in Plainfield, and it had this big poster and it was the Let Us Unite poster, I think, and it had him like with stars and with the blue suit on, and this brother had the waves, and I was like, oh man, you know, I want to be like that, right? So that's what attracted us to it, and it gave us a bond because we went from a gang lifestyle, you know, when we was kind of fighting one another, nunchucks, knives, you know, you name it, we was bringing it. But Islam, just like hip hop did, it kind of brought us all together. So I saw that brotherhood, and when I was a young brother, I was like stingy. I was like a stingy person because, you know, when you have something in the community, right, you try to protect it because people are trying to rob you and this and that. So you even hide things sometimes, right? You put money in your sock, you know, you was just equipped coming up in the hood of the street. And but the first thing that the brothers of the 5%ers taught me was freedom, justice, and equality. Like I said in the lesson, who was the 5%? And I just remember going to White Castle and we got the number 6. And the brother explained to me that the number 6 represented equality and that he was going to share his meal with me, you know, and because I didn't have any money. And that brother became my enlightener. He became my teacher because he demonstrated a certain aspect of brotherhood that, again, that I wasn't really necessarily accustomed to. And he attributed that to the teachings, you know, Islam or the lessons. So that's what really attracted me. I can't say really attracted me because, brother, this day, I still got the gleam in my eye for the knowledge. So I still feel like the same person every time the knowledge comes.
Did you know, because growing up in the Midwest, of course, when we came in, I had never really heard of the 5%ers. I guess it was a East Coast thing, but by being in the nation early after the first Savior's Day in 1981, then I joined right after in 1982. I think I met Dr. Aline before the minister named him Aline. But there was a brother called, he came to Chicago with him. He was called True Mathematics.
Yes,
and
sir.
he was with them in Washington, D.C. So I said, what kind of name is that? You know, True Mathematics. I said, man, we done gone off the deep end or something here. We done changed the name to, but I didn't know about the 5% Nation and how they named each other. And of course, in number 12, we ended up with people with, there was Born Righteous was with us, and, you know, Jay Electronica, and there was brother, oh God.
Understanding.
Yeah.
Understanding.
Yeah.
With the other brother that was with us, his name escapes me now, having a moment, but it
Ali.
back to me. No, it was true. It was Born Righteous, but there was another brother with us. He used to go back and forth from number 12 to New York.
That's understanding
all the time.
You'll probably understand
Justice, or his name will come to me.
Okay,
but anyway, you know, so we just didn't know about like the 5% Nation, but some of the accounts in your book, some people had said that like if somebody couldn't recite the lessons, they might have been roughed up or something physically. I don't know if that was the case, but you can always get extreme people. Was that something that Clarence 13 would condone, or was he that extreme?
Oh no, absolutely not. That's not anything that he would condone. You know, the one thing that he was always very mindful of, knowing that he was in constant danger, he never wanted to put children in danger. So whenever he had any kind of altercations, you know, with the authorities, which at the time was dealing with counterintelligence program by J. Edgar Hoover, he always was mindful to try to keep them out of harm's way. And he's on record in stating that, you know, to the authorities. So he never, you know, he never advocated anyone hurting each other. He had the same law, like you said, you know, because he was an FOI. So he brought the same laws from the temple out on the street. And you hear Brother Minister Farrakhan say, you know, one time when he was in the FOI class, and how he was just jokingly, you know, joking with another FOI, and he put his hands up. Then Captain Yusuf Shah said to him, he said, okay, when you put your hands up, you would have to beat everybody in here.
Everybody in here, yeah.
And that was the way Brother Clarence 13X was with it. Okay, if you raise your hand up, then you got to fight everybody that's here. So that was one of the preventive ways.
Now, there was controversy in your book around him being shot, I believe, in 1964. But from what I could hear after moving to the East Coast, there seemed to be controversy around either not so much how he died, but the reasons are surrounding it and everything. So what did they ever just, did anybody ever come and just clear the record on both of those things, 1964 and 1969, the attacks on Clarence 13?
Yes, well, the first time in 1964 when he was shot, he was shot in the basement on 127th Street there in Harlem. And that pretty much was because of the environment that he was in. There was an altercation that another brother that was in the temple with him had, Brother John 37X, aka Abu Shaheed, and he had a discrepancy with a group of brothers. And Brother Clarence came to try to make peace in that accord. But, the brother just took out a sawed-off shotgun and boom, and shot him point blank. And that was the first time, that when he was shot, that's how that happened. Really, that was just a discrepancy that was out in the community, out in the street, him coming to the aid of his brother. In 1969 is when he was assassinated, June 13th of 1969, in Foster Projects, known as MLK Projects on 112th Street in Harlem. He was going to see his family, of course, and his family, again, Sister Dora 3X Smith, and he had his daughters, Christine and Deborah. Then he had his sons, Clarence and Perry. So naturally, at night, he would go home after leaving the Allah Street Academy or the Universal Street Academy. So after teaching the youth in the street, in the community, then he would go home. But like I said, it was a dangerous time at that point. A lot of people were being assassinated. But the thing around his assassination, when he was assassinated, he was by himself. So there's no one else there to actually witness it. So he was really targeted and assassinated. This thing was calculated. And so no one was there as a witness. The assassin or assassins escaped the scene of the crime. The only thing that we do know is that, just like with the Counterintelligence Program, they do have the Freedom of Information Act, and they acknowledge that the 5%ers, just like the Nation of Islam and the Black Panthers, as we see in this modern day and time, all this things are coming out about Brother Malcolm and the setup and everything like that with the Black Panthers. So the FBI documented that they had agents within the ranks of the 5%ers, right? So they document this and they document who they were targeting. And the people that they were targeting were like the leadership of the movement. And that would have been the brothers that was former FOI. So starting with Brother Clarence 13X, then Shaheed, who was John 37X, then a brother by the name of Old Man Justice, who was James 109X. Then you had a brother named Eugene 32X. So in the FBI files, they say that these four were considered to be like the leaders and the pillars of the 5%ers. So they targeted those four. So when Brother Clarence was assassinated, nobody was there as a witness, but the Freedom of Information Act, they have everything like redacted around his assassination. So all you see is all these pages on the assassination of Brother Clarence 13X Smith, AKA Allah the Father, and it's all heavily redacted. So there's something that they know that we don't know, that they have yet to tell us. But, truth crushed to the ground will soon rise again. Eventually, if it's Allah will reveal it all. But
I
it's
understand that and I understand that the press tried to see if they could foment a war between the 5%ers and Mosque number 7,
right,
hoping to sort of like, as you coined it, kill two birds with one stone.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes,
but it didn't work. I think everyone was for it there, which was good for the Black movement. But
the most important thing, if I can intervene on that particular point, the most important thing about that is interesting how, history is best qualified to reward our research. And we see what happens in the past, present, and then we know what's going to happen in the future. The person that actually circumvented the plan by the FBI, by Boss, which was a component of the New York Police Department that was to infiltrate, neutralize, which means to assassinate Black leadership in the New York City area. The one brother that circumvented that under the wisdom and the guidance of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was, you guess it, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, as the minister of Mosque number 7. He held a press conference and he dealt with that whole entire subject, right? So by him holding that press conference, being a man of peace, of righteousness, and communicating this information to the brothers and sisters in the streets of Harlem, after that, it was a null and void thing. So I just wanted to cite how history, is 360. in a sense, because brother's still on his post, right? So,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
so
Oh yeah.
that's how that, in a sense, became circumvented because of the wisdom of Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his minister.
You know,
Correct.
Wakil, the way you describe the history of the assassination of Clarence 13X, or as we know him, the father,
Mhm.
Father Allah, especially during that time where there was no clearly identifiable structure. Um, the way you defined it, I'm interested in knowing your perspective on the concept of martyrdom, and
Mhm.
as a result of the father's Clarence 13X assassination, and then what led to the kind of organization of what we lovingly call the first nine born.
Mhm.
Could you speak to that?
Yes, sir. One of the things that I learned as a young 5%er when I got access to Brother Minister Abdul Kareem Muhammad's lessons, I read the history of Esau, the history of Jesus, the true history of Esau, the true history of Jesus as written by Allah and the person of Master Fraud Muhammad. And the one thing that stood out to me when he spoke about this great prophetic figure, Jesus, that many of us, especially as Muslims, know and love, he said that Jesus offered up his life. Jesus gave his life. So Jesus paid the highest sacrifice that anybody could ask of an individual, meaning that he gave up his life. But the thing that made it so powerful to me is that Master Prophet Muhammad said immediately after that, as any Muslim would give their life in the cause of Islam. So
Mhm.
you know a Muslim, because our word is bond, we should give our life before our word shall fail. You know, my life, my death, my sacrifice is all for Allah, the Lord of all of the worlds. So the true testament, as Brother Minister Farrakhan pointed out when he was on his deathbed going through cancer, now he was tested. He was right there at the
Mhm.
throes of death. And he said that his daughter recognized that he was saying, thanking Allah for allowing him to be in his universe. So he thanked Allah even when he thought he was on his way out. So that's a true testament of a martyr, a true testament of those who sacrifice. So I had great and powerful respect for Brother Clarence 13X, or Allah the Father, just like the firstborns did, because he actually gave his life. He was assassinated without a shadow of a doubt because of the impact that he was having on the youth. And J. Edgar Hoover said the focus is on those who could ignite and organize the youth. So therefore, he was a key figure,
Mhm.
he was in the crosshairs of the FBI. So when he was assassinated, just like many brothers and sisters of, the movement or the culture of our people, automatically he was considered a martyr. But he was in a line in a succession of other martyrs, right? That we know from the Black Panthers, from
Mhm.
going back Denmark, BC, the Haiti, the Nat Turner, these are all powerful images. And then, of course, going back to our brother Jesus. And like I said, it's past, present, and future. We know in the present that, there is to be a betrayal, right? They want to establish a crucifixion. And it's really this one person that put their life on the line. And if you see 1995, the Million Man March, 2 million men showed up,
Mhm.
not knowing what was going to transpire, not knowing what was going to go down. Again, we a big target of the government. That was the purpose why we had the march, to atone, right? To atone to Allah, to do better by our families and by our children. And the brother that guided us, Brother Minister Farrakhan, I see him, as a Muslim, just like in the lesson, how Esau, how Jesus was, Master Prophet Muhammad, how we ought to be as brothers and sisters to one another. So when you're willing to give your life, just like it says, brother student minister Michael Muhammad, Malik, the scriptures very powerfully, brother. Your exegesis of the scriptures, good God, is extremely impressive. But those willing to give their lives, will save their own lives. Those who are afraid, maybe in a sense, can end up foolishly, sacrificing their life. So martyrdom is something that I think that we don't necessarily strive to die. We strive to live. That's why we say Allah is a true and living God, and Allah cannot die. And one of the great concepts of martyrdom is that if you do fall within the process, as far as expiring physically due to whether it's an assassin, or whether you are a martyr in the cause, you will live forever in that regard, eternally within your
Mhm.
people, in the spirit of your people. That's another thing that Master Muhammad pointed out that stuck with me too. Jesus knew, he said that if he were to give his life, that he would have, in a sense, eternal life because he would be forever remembered. So he would always be a constant example. And for him just to know that he was still inspired after the grave, he gave his life to the two soldiers, right, that assassinated him. So that's how I see
Yeah.
martyrdom. But I would think and hopefully strive to think that just as Jesus did, that any Muslim would be willing to give their life for the sake and the cause of Allah.
And
And
Minister Farrakhan just said that anyone that dies in a plague or a pandemic is a martyr. And he mentioned that at the death of our dear brother Abdul Hafiz Muhammad. Well, with some of the time we have left, I want to, one of the questions that's been getting me, you did this history of the Nation of Islam.
Yeah.
How did you find these people that go way back to the 30s, man? I mean, you talked to some people that were there with the Savior.
Well, yes, sir. Well, what happened in that regard, again, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, a lot of people attribute that quote to Minister Malcolm X. History is best qualified to reward our research and is the most attractive. But really, of course, that comes from Master Father Muhammad and the most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So I can't necessarily take credit for that because throughout the annals of time and the Nation of Islam, they would document this history in one of the greatest newspapers that the world has ever seen, in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. So I, just like my brothers and sisters, part of the research team, they do an excellent job. I do an excellent job as far as trying to go out and being passionate about the history. So a lot of times I'll sacrifice whatever and I'll just stay up night and day, going into the archives, retrieving this information, typing out this information, vetting the information, going to different newspapers, traveling to different institutions, colleges, etc., museums, all to extract this information because the information is out there. It's just a matter of us uncovering it. So the majority of information that I have, as far as that book, The History of the Nation of Islam, the pioneer years, which goes from 1930 to 1950, those pioneers had passed on before I even had the thought.
Okay.
But again,
you
they
secured them?
archived.
I mean, to read it, it sounds like you're there interviewing them. I said, how did he find these people? There was a sister named Sister Seal. She lived in Des Moines, Iowa.
Right.
She's just passed on, but she used to just tell us some fantastic things about back then sitting in the temple as a young girl when Master Fard Muhammad was teaching and just the way that we were back then. And then, of course, there's Sister Medina, whose mother is Sister Bernstein. She was the secretary for Master Fard Muhammad and became the first known captain of the MGT in the nation. And she has a lot of material too, but I didn't know you had researched it. That is incredible, brother.
Yeah.
The way that book is put together, I'm picturing you there finding these people on the streets of Detroit. And I said, I didn't even know some of these people were still around, but that helps me that you to know that you secured some of those testimonies. So how did the testimonies even how did they even get? I mean, somebody must have questioned them or something to get the testimonies the way you got them and put them in the book.
Right. In the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, one of the things I heard the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan express, what Islam has done for me, right? The different stories and how we came into Islam and the benefits of Islam. So they had a constant series in the Muhammad Speaks, what Islam has done for me. And it was the different pioneers writing about their experiences. So I took a lot of that directly verbatim from their experiences. And that's how I wrote it, like a documentary. One of the great things about learning as a young person, the history of Master Fard Muhammad, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave it to us. He said that Master Fard Muhammad could recite history 150,000 years verbatim, and he would explain it to you as if you was right there, witnessing it for yourself. And when you hear, like in the Black community and throughout the diaspora, like we have griots, right? Or griots, some people would say.
Yeah.
And these are people that deal with actual, verbal history, right, in the communicating the spoken word. And Brother Minister Abdul Akbar Muhammad, got to give him a shout out because he was one of the first brothers that really inspired a lot of us to chronicle history, like Brother Student Minister Carlos out of Baltimore with the NOI
Yeah.
archives, Brother Ali out of Detroit, like you said, my sister, and I love my sister so much, the great sister Medina and her family, the family of Brother Supreme Minister John Muhammad, the brother of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. So in a way that when you're dealing with the spoken word or the history or the the verbal history is being shared by those in the community, you really get the pulse and the heartbeat and the rhythm. You know what I mean? So you get the soulful aspect of it, and so you really think that you were really there because the people that were telling you, and the energy coming out of the pages, you could feel the energy and spirit. Like you said, you could feel the
Yeah.
vibe of how they're communicating, right? And they're telling you firsthand accounts and that they were there. So I always express it in the Nation of Islam. And I'm thankful for my brother, student minister Michael Muhammad, because he's like the #1 brother. Him and Brother Abdul, student minister Abdul Muhammad out of Chicago. And of course, my brother, student minister Dr. Wesley, have always been great advocates for the history and even inspiring me to say, hey, you know what, brothers and sisters, you probably should check this book out if you want to learn about, some of the early history, because in our lessons, in the original instructions to the laborers, it says that we will be tested on the 3.5-year history, right? So I like to go back in time
Very,
and
yeah.
see these things from this great, powerful, I mean, there should be a movie about it. There should be a documentary in the sense that we produce, and they did produce a documentary in the Nation of Islam, I believe it was in 1975, chronicling the early years of the Nation of Islam. So I really utilize that as a reference to
Is
see
that
these
in
pioneers
existence
in every
now?
video.
That documentary? That
Yes,
that
sir.
Yes,
documentary is
sir,
in
it is.
existence now?
Yes, sir. It's on
Uh,
YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
Yes, sir. Now.
on YouTube, those early years. Wow, that is
Mhm.
really something. So with all of that research and everything, I mean, you obviously there's groups of you emerging that just are
Mhm.
grabbing large slices of this great
Right.
history
Mhm.
of our 90 years or more
Mhm.
being up in America. Um, and it does seem like it needs to get wrapped up in some kind of big documentary, maybe with all of you speaking of something on
Mhm.
aspects of what you have brought so that this thing can be put together in a way, because I'm sure our enemies and hosts that the Quran promised us, who sit and watch us from a place that we know not, I'm sure they're putting together their own documentary for their own spin.
Right.
And it made me, I thought about it when I saw this recent event there at the Capitol building and the young brother charging the car into the Capitol Police. And it took my mind back after they went to his Facebook page to try to tie him with the Nation of Islam. And of course, the spin that they wanted was that somehow our teaching
Mhm.
would be something that would lead somebody to do something like this. And obviously, it's just the opposite.
Right.
But in the early years, I still have some writings of some people who they had come to the temple, but they sort of left. I think his name was Robert Harris, and he ended up doing something drastic there in the 30s in
Mhm.
Detroit. So
Mhm.
it made me think, well, God, if they put all that together, they could produce a horror story
Mhm.
about us out of it with their own spin.
Mhm.
But if we had something that really put the proper light or put all these events in the proper light as we bring the Nation of Islam's history to some larger documentary. They have a they have a documentary that my wife and I had secured at one time called From Montgomery to Selma.
Mhm.
And it covers the career of Dr. King, the nonviolent direct action movement, all the way from Rosa Parks refusing to give up that seat uh, to Martin Luther King being assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. But it covers so much of the history that you get a fuller picture of
Right.
Dr. King and those lieutenants that work close with him. And so I'm just thinking about something like that that just puts everything together, and it doesn't leave a lot of room for people to plant distortions of the
Absolutely.
nation and especially events that have taken place. But man, that is so terrific. I mean, you've been busy since Morehouse College. Um, did you major in research or something like that? Or I didn't even
um,
ask you what you majored in there.
no, sir. Actually, I had majored in business.
Oh,
Yes, sir. But my major is really, I guess, you really know what you really want to do when you love what you do, right? And you're willing to do it without getting paid for it. Not only not getting paid for it, but really sacrificing in the process. So,
uh-huh.
so I just always loved Islam and the Nation of Islam. And as I got inspired in high school, then when I got to Morehouse College, I kind of hit the ground running. And first brother that I met, believe it or not, and I was getting mentored by was brother Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. so,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I pop
Yeah.
up on campus and hey, I'm there running my mouth on Morehouse. I'm trying to teach everybody Islam, right?
Uh-huh.
Because it was virgin territory in a sense as that went. Because I was like one of the only brothers there that was dealing, with Islam or the 5%ers, what have you, you know, at that time.
Mm.
And so from the first day that I got there, I, in a sense, was deputized to spread and teach Islam. And so we were blessed to raise up many there. Then others came to start going to Morehouse College. And it was a whole entire group of us, me, uh, Dr. Wesley, Brother Born Righteous, Malou Sadiq Allah, uh,
Mhm.
Brother Tori Muhammad out of Chicago, Brother Lieutenant Jackie Muhammad,
Mhm.
Brother Bernard Kushmir. He was talking about the NOI.org and the final call.com. And I was blessed in a sense to see the vision of Brother Bernard Kushmir that he had as a young college student to actually, he introduced me to this thing called the internet. And he
Oh
was like,
yeah.
brother, he said, I'm going to establish the Nation of Islam on the web. And I was like, what? Yeah, on the web. And this was like right prior to the Million Man March. So every time I would go over to his house, what he was doing on the computer, creating a website and everything like that. And he started the NOI.org and then the finalcall.com. But these were just different brothers, and sisters that was there prevalent with us on the AU Center, Morehouse, Spelman, Clark, Atlanta,
Okay.
and Morris Brown College. So we
Yeah.
were very adamant and very enthusiastic about spreading the teachings of the Nation of Islam. And okay, I can't forget. How can I forget my great brother Saad, the National Secretary, Student
Oh yeah.
National Secretary of the Nation of
That's
Islam.
right.
So we were all there together, bonded, as brothers. We got some great war stories we could talk about. Even being on campus and having to deal with the administration, because we often would try to bring the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan up there to speak to the
Well, I
students.
have to say that the experience that it for me with the 5% Nation, because I
Mm-hmm.
only know it from a distance,
Mm-hmm.
and basically I only really know it from those who have come in the nation and been around us working. It has paid off, because whatever and however you were learning the mathematics and the alphabet and whatever, it landed you all with the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I have to say that those that are in our mosque, they bring something to the table, but they have a sense of Islam, a real passion for it, and I like that. And
Praise be to Allah.
that was one of the things that I saw. Our time is running out now, but man, we've got to have a part two to this show. We want
That's
to
right.
ask you to come back. You know why? Because I'm so interested in us getting into rap. When rock and roll came out, there was some resistance to the prior generations in that. But when rap came out, it was so misunderstood by generations preceding those that were rapping and that.
Mhm.
And Then when it took a turn and it seemed to become more toxic, people tend to kind of broad brush paint the narrative that rap was toxic from the beginning, and I don't believe that it was. And really having a discussion about it, and I'd like to bring on, some people that with you that really know about real rap and what happened to it. But I think we need a real discussion on that because it's not going anywhere. But what do we do with it now? That it's here and the toxic form, that it's in. Because I'm a baby boomer, so we grew up on the streets south side of Chicago. We learned about love songs, and then you had James Brown and all of this. But you know, the, there was no song. Nobody was making a song about really hurting somebody else. And I'm understanding that some of the rap now, the lyrics that are being planted in some of the communication in that, uh, it's being cited as playing a role in a lot of the carnage that's going on in the Black community in that. But I think it begs for a good discussion to get to the root of the problem, as we're always taught to try. Let's try to get to the root of things, and so we know that the enemy has really corrupted us in that area. So, Brother Michael, did you have any other things? I
Sir.
want to ask Wakeel Allah if he had any closing remarks.
Yeah, but before you say your closing remarks, Wakil, I do have a very important question, and I'm certain everyone else would like to know. What is in the works? Can we expect another book?
Mhm. Oh, brother, there's a lot I would say that's in the works. There's something constant, every day there's something constant always on my mind. And primarily it's dealing with chronicling the history, of those of us in the Nation of Islam, those of us in the Black community. So there's various different projects that I could really kind of go into, but for sake of not knowing which one that I'm really going to go with at this point, but I would say it's definitely going to be something around just what brother Minister Rodney Muhammad was just speaking on as it relates to, our community and impacting some of the different people in our community that have been influenced and that are influencers. Because I will say this to what you said earlier, Brother Michael, that in speaking of this culture as relates to hip hop, and and I've gone around different personalities, and I don't even want to even talk about some of those that we know that are already rooted in the teachings and have some of the wisdom and have a fascination and enthusiasm around it. But I've been around some of these mumble rappers, some of the people that you might be referring to that have a certain message that may not be the best of messages. But the most interesting thing, as you see the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan travel throughout the land, you see these rappers gravitate toward him. So even those in the drill rap, some of the people
Right.
that you would never think would come in respect and treasure Brother Minister Farrakhan, they're right there. And their attention, their eyes are wide open, their ears are wide open. And when those of us that go amongst them as representatives of the Nation of Islam, I've never met with any resistance. I mean, only magnetic attraction
Mm-hmm.
from some of these brothers and sisters that have these different messages. So I say all that to say that I think, big fields await the wide awake man and woman, to work out in. So as we work, as the brother minister instructs us to go out into the community, as we work in our different communities, I think Allah is going to bless us to attract our people and put them on the right path. Because like I said, we all got the same story. We
Right.
all started, in a sense, down and dirty. As Brother Minister Farrakhan says, he says it's like the water coming up out of the lake or the river. The water is, in a sense, down there in the lake and it's mixing with the mud. But the sun that's pulling the water up, just like it says in our lesson, what make rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes, the sun is pulling the water up. Now the sun pull the water up into the atmosphere, it's purifying it,
That's
right?
right.
So the sun and our universal flag or the national flag, the sun, moon, and stars, the sun represents freedom, right? It represents truth. It represents the light. So when we shine that light and we bring that water up, which is the people, the people
Mhm.
start getting purified,
Open toward the light.
purified.
That's right.
So water is symbolic to wisdom. Now we got purification. So really, all I see is potential. You know, when I see what we consider 85% what the law found, I mean, all I see is, as we've been instructed to see, is the potential. And we go and we put Allah first and his wisdom and his guidance,
Mhm.
you know, Allah will bless us to success. But whatever will happen, Allah will be done, as long as we are Muslims lining up our will to submit to do the will of Allah. So I'm always inspired, brother student
Mhm.
minister Rodney Muhammad, like I said, by yourself, my brother student minister Michael Muhammad. They're in the study group in Atlantic City. You know, Mosque number 10 has a lot of powerful history.
Oh yeah.
Brother minister, yeah, brother minister Robert, Wilmington,
Mhm.
Delaware. That's like 35 and number 12 is like, you know, our homes, you know, like the brothers
Yeah.
and sisters that in the Nation of Islam that identify as part of the Allah team. I mean, we just love that area, the camaraderie, you
Well, we
know.
love you. Yeah, we love you too. And we are out of time, but I want to get your promise that you'll come back so we can take a deeper dive into some of the things that we were wrapping up, because you ended it on a beautiful note.
Yes, sir.
That no matter what's out there, we have what it takes to make it right now.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And to draw on the good nature of God that's already in our people. That's the real assignment. That's
Praise
the
be
real
to
assignment.
Allah.
Yeah. So, but we thank you so much for being with us. Want to thank you, Brother Michael, and thank your lovely wife for engineering all this for us here. This has been another edition of our newly found show, the Souls of Black Folk broadcast. And we want to have you back, Brother Wakeel Allah. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you, beloved family.
All right.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Right.